So now I got Joseph with me again because I'm going to need his help yanking the cab power cable out from underneath the cab on a 8235R. So we've got a cab power cable and I've got battery cables. This is a tractor that I was working on this spring, having cab power issues only when you turn the lights on. I was able to get the tractor good enough to run during the day, but as soon as he would turn the lights on at night when he was planting, he would get low cab power messages. So he was able to continue to run, so he just kept on running until he got done. So now that we have time to get out there and work on a little bit more, my suspicion is that we have a cab power cable that will not handle a load. So we're going to go try a cab power cable, but I'll tell you more about the what I've already done to the tractor once we get there. Here's the big rig right here, 8235R. So what we've already done to this tractor, it wasn't having enough voltage to handle the load once the customer turned the lights on. So the first thing I found was the cab power connection back here. This was all just super rusted and corroded. Took that all apart, cleaned it, got that connection solid. So there's a stud in this back wall. The cab power connections and the power connections for the controller on the back connect there. The stud goes through the wall, and then there's two more controllers that get power on the inside. So I took both sides apart, got that all done, and it didn't really improve it that much. So I started checking the alternator output on this tractor, and it was only pushing like 13.3, 13.4 alternators back here on this tractor. Went ahead and cleaned all the connections. So this is the power wire going to the alternator. Goes to what we call an AB comm relay. So it's an alternator battery relay. So that opens and disconnects the connection from the alternator to the battery here. So I checked all my volt drops from here all the way through the master fuse and everything. That seemed to be all good, but I went ahead and took everything apart and cleaned it, put it all back together. Had like a 0.3 or so volt drop on the AB comm relay. I got busy, so another tech came out and put an AB comm relay in it. That didn't fix it, so we ended up putting I put a new alternator on it, a reman alternator, and then it still wasn't pushing out enough. I was getting like 13.5, but we were still dropping enough volts between here, through all these connections, all the way through the power cable in the back, through all the controllers, and it was saying, I think, 13 volts with the lights on, but that's not enough to set the code. It has to get, I think, below 12.7 or so to set the code. But it was happening after the tractor had been running for a while in the field with the lights on. So I'm assuming things just starting to get hot over time. So I ended up putting a new alternator on instead of reman, and then I finally had 14.2 volts coming out of the alternator, which is what I'd like to see. It should read 14 to 14.2 inside of the cab on the armrest display. So I finally got 14.3 coming out and clear down to here, but this is the cab power cable. I was only getting, I think, about 13.5 volts at the back, and then through all the different connections, I think would only read about 13.3 with the lights on. So I think this cab power cable, it ohms out good, but I don't think it can handle a load. So there might be some corrosion, probably on the back side where I had a bunch of corrosion to begin with. So the inside of the cable might be corroded there. So today we're going to try to go ahead and replace this cable, but it goes under the cab and has a bunch of clamps and stuff to get to. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get it out without removing these duals on the back in order to get underneath there to get it through the clamps and everything. So right now we're just kind of taking things apart, getting into it, and figuring out if we're going to be able to get that in and out without taking these tires off, because I did not bring my air jacks with me to take these duals off. Plus, it's got a planter on the back, so I'd have to take the planter off in order to get it jacked up. So I'm doing a little thinking right now. All right, so I have determined that the only way you would be able to get this cable in and out and properly get it through all the clamps and everything is you would have to take these duals off and then unbolt the cab and raise the cab probably 3-4 inches in order to get it out. I don't know if you can see this on camera or not, but here's the cable right here. But back in there's a clamp right, focus. There's a clamp right there where my laser is. You can't get to that very well. But then there's another clamp. You can't see it way back in there. There it is, right there. So see that bolt right there? The cab is sitting on that bolt for that clamp. So you ain't getting that out. And they are just P-clamps, but I tried yanking on that cable, and those clamps have got them smashed in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave that old cable into place. We're going to fish a new cable through there and hook it up on both ends, and we're just going to see what happens, if it fixes it or not. And then if it does, we're just going to zip tie it up the best we can and leave that old cable into place, because that would take a tremendous amount of work in order to get those tires off and be able to get everything unhooked from the cab where you had enough clearance to raise it that many inches. I mean, we have the ability to do it out here in the cab, but I'm just trying to save the customer, thousands of dollars in labor in doing that. So we're going to try to just run that cable through. I think I'll take a fish tape from the back and try to get it all the way through to where we can hook it to the new cable and fish it through. All right, so we use my fish tape. We're able to get that new cable fished in there. We took a zip tie around it. That was a good time, wasn't it, Joseph?
Yeah, that's a fun maneuver underneath the tractor.
Man, they got some big cables going to the battery, going back to the planter, and those were just fighting us in the way. But we got it fished through there in a good path. All right, so we got the new cab power wire in here, secured, everything all hooked up. I went ahead and replaced the battery cables. The ground cable was fraying pretty bad and was kinked right here. The power cables had some corrosion on them. That comes up. The power cable has a little spot where it goes in right there. It goes on the 2 battery posts, and then it's got the big power wire going to the starter. So that's all new. I went ahead and hooked up everything. All these extra wires for the planter are all hooked up correctly the way I want them. So I'll get the covers on and we'll start this thing up and see what happens. All right, so we got good charging voltage. The code doesn't come on. I think we're good to go. Let him give this a try, see what happens. Hey, welcome back to ZK Master Tech. Today, I'm out working on a 7130 Premium here. 7130. Actually, is it not a Premium? It just says 7130. Anyway, 7130. So the customer is complaining that the tractor will start and run, but it will not move forward or reverse. When he puts the lever in forward or reverse, he can hear the transmission going into gear and shifting, but the tractor will not move forward or reverse. So we're going to see what is causing that issue right now. We're on a build site here. They're doing a bunch of dirt work. They're clearing 9 acres for a concrete and rock and 3-acre pond going in. There's all kinds of stuff going out here. This is about as far into construction work that you're going to see ZK go into, but we've got a green tractor here on this build site, so we're going to take a look at it and see what's causing this problem. So let's get into it. All right, first things first, let's verify the complaint. So this is neutral. Oh, it's moving. Okay, well, he said sometimes it would move, sometimes it wouldn't. Not moving now. Yeah, we got reverse there. Well, it did it once. There, not moving. Hold on. The heck? See what codes it's got. Alright, got some codes here. VIN information incorrect. Vehicle CAN bus very high error rate. Incorrect CAN bus message. CAN message from ECU incorrect. CAN bus message from the EPC TCU. Bunch of VIN security stuff. So you have a few controllers on here that's constantly communicating the VIN number, and whenever they stop communicating, they throw an error message for that. So looks like we have an issue with the CAN bus. You know, the CAN bus very high error rate is 126 times stored in there, which is the maximum amount. But then also we got forward solenoid valve current too low, reverse solenoid valve current too low. That could explain why she's not moving forward and back. That's been stored 27 and then one time in there. So, but if we're not communicating correctly, this forward and reverse stuff ain't going to work right. So, anytime on one of these tractors that I get these CAN bus codes, I automatically throw an active terminator on it, because they put the active terminator right above the radiator, and guess what? It's really, really hot right there, and they just get cooked. So I think first things first, I brought a terminator with me. We're just going to throw an active terminator on, clear all these codes out, and then we'll just see how she behaves after that. All right, we got the hood popped up right here. So here is your active CAN bus terminator right here. You know, it gets really hot in this area right here. So in this one, I could tell is never, I don't think it's been replaced. Maybe it has. No one flush cutted the zip tie. They're animals. So we'll get this cut off, put a new terminator in there, and we'll just see what happens. Flush cut. Check. Oh, that's nice. Okay. Shoe in gear. And we're moving. Alright, I'm just going to keep testing and testing. See if we can get it to fail again. Oh, it failed again. This thing should be moving forward. Neutral lights flashing. It goes backwards. Shift to the lower gear here. Let's just see what code is set real quick. All right, EPC forward solenoid valve current too low. So I remember seeing the forward and the reverse solenoid valve current too low in the list of codes before. Now it's just doing it for the forward. So we need to read through the code diagnostics and see what those two have in common and see if we can find a common point of what would be causing the current to be too low on those solenoid valves. Alright, so now I'm watching the enable pressure whenever I go into gear. And it slowly goes up to what it's supposed to. And now I can't get the thing to act up. I've been back and forth, watching this enable pressure. Nothing. Can't get it to act up again. Oh, gotta love intermittent problems. Alright, so I got underneath the tractor here and I'm checking out the forward and reverse solenoid valves here. When I popped this connector off, I had a little bit of oil on this tan part, not much. Also, the same on the reverse valve. I checked the solenoid resistance and it was 15.8. So the spec is 15 ohms at 68 degrees. So it's close. But this one, the reverse valve, was 15.8 as well. It's exactly the same. So that's not just screaming, here I am, ta-da, fix me. This wiring is pretty hard and stiff. I did use a flex probe to do a terminal test to see how well the terminal fit in there, and it fits in good and snug. Feels good, so I don't think that's the problem. I went ahead and cleaned it off with some contact cleaner. We'll plug it back together, and I need to get this thing into a failed state where I can start checking the enable pressure and or start checking some circuits and stuff, but right now it's working. Okay, so captain's log. Haven't been able to get this thing to act up ever since. I do know there was two issues with this tractor, right? So we had, when I first turned the key on, you instantly had a code without even moving the transmission selector forward or reverse. And we had all those CAN bus codes in there. After swapping the active terminator out, none of those CAN bus codes have come back. After I swapped the active CAN bus terminator, I was able to get the forward solenoid valve current low to store one time. It acted up once. And I was also watching the enable pressure whenever that was happening, and it was reading good. So that's why I went underneath. I checked the solenoid valves, checked the resistance. Now it says the spec is 15 ohms at 68 degrees. They're both forward and reverse are 15.8. It's pretty close, but is it exact? No. So it also could have been a connection on those valves. I mean, this tractor's got almost 4,000 hours. Those valves look like they've never been disturbed, removed, or nothing. So, I mean, it could have just been a connection issue there. Also, there was a little bit of oil that had leaked out into the connector, and I sprayed those out. And, of course, running the terminal test and put my flex probe in and out could have cleaned the terminals a little bit. So, I mean, I could have fixed the issue just by doing what I did. So I'm going to fiddle with this thing a little bit longer because I got another service call to go to. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to order the forward and reverse solenoid valves, so I'll have them in the morning. I told the customer start the tractor in the morning because he said, I called him again and I wanted to get a little bit more information on when exactly this is the problem. And he said it mainly happens when you first start the tractor in the morning or the first start of the day, and then it acts up. So it seems like the problem is more when it's cold, because he said, once they get the tractor working, it just works for the rest of the day. So gotta love these intermittent problems with these tractors. So like I said, I'm going to order the valves. We'll have them in the morning, and then he's going to check this tractor in the morning. And if the problem comes back, Then we'll come back, we'll look and see what codes are set in there, and then we'll have the valves on hand to be able to swap them out. So I'm going to run this thing a few more times, and then I'll pack up my stuff and leave, and we'll go to the next service call. All right, so as soon as I got done talking to you guys, I put the tractor in reverse and it didn't move. And it set 2 communication codes again for the BCU. Did not get the message from the ECU, and the ECU didn't get a message from the BCU. So actually, I misspoke earlier when we were talking about the active terminator. That one up on top of the radiator is actually the passive terminator. The active terminator is back here. So we're going to go ahead and swap that one out too and see what happens. So on the back side of the cab here, take this panel off, and back here is where the active terminator is. I'm going to put this new one on there, put that back together, and then we'll just see what happens. All right, so swap the active terminator out on the back of the cab, and no codes. Everything is working fine, but we've obviously seen that before. The whole thing's been working fine. It's a very intermittent problem. So I still don't know if we have a shift valve issue. And you guys are probably wondering what the difference is between an active and a passive terminator. Basically, the active, you have terminators on each end of the bus. So the active terminator is going to have 6 lines going to it and provides additional voltage to the CAN bus. And the passive is going to be on the other end of the CAN bus, and it's just going to have 4 wires going to it, and it's not providing additional voltage. So the terminators are to basically terminate messages on the CAN bus to provide like reliable communication. So if you're it reduces the interference on the CAN bus, basically. So if your CAN bus gets too many messages on it, then it just kind of floods it, and then everything can't communicate properly. So those resistors are terminating the messages at the end of the bus. So each message that's being broadcast from point A to point B is getting deleted at the end, so it isn't constantly stuck in there. So sometimes you have an issue with communication. If you check your CAN bus voltages and your CAN bus voltages are off, you can always swap those terminators because they're the same part number. They just have different amount of wires going to them. So sometimes you can make the problem go away by swapping the active and passive one, and then you know which one you need to replace or swap out. For me, it's good practice if one's bad to just go ahead and swap both of them out, right? So got that swapped out. I got the valves ordered. I can't get this thing knocked up anymore again, and I'm going to get out of here because I got to get going to this next service call. So let's get packed up and head out. All right. Gotta love those CAN bus issues with those tractors. So he's going to go ahead and try that in the morning, let it sit. He doesn't need the tractor right now, but tomorrow he's going to hook a disc up to it. So I guess we'll see how she behaves in the morning. Right now, we're going to go look at a 8R410 that I previously looked at that had a blown coolant hose going back to a junction block that feeds the DEF injector and the heater core for the cab. So we got a line that's ruptured and leaking, so we're going to go there and swap that out real quick. Okay, we're here. Boy, it feels good in here. Nice, clean 8R410. It just doesn't get any better than this, folks. This is the baddest row crop tractor Deere makes. Anyway, we're going in here. There's a coolant line right there that is ruptured. Let me bring you in here. See that? Yeah. Now it doesn't leak unless you get it hot. But yeah, that's about ready to blow. So what that line does is you got the lines coming off the engine. Those two lines go back to a junction block back here. And then the coolant is divided into the DEF injector, the heater core, and the DEF tank header. So that line, we're going to try to hot swap that line. We're going to leak some coolant out, but we should only lose a couple quarts or so, hopefully. And then we'll get this thing topped off with coolant. Then the customer's going to wash the tractor in here, and we'll be good to go. It's tool time. So let's talk about some tools we have here. Here we have the new Snap-on hose clamp pliers. See how those are designed? And then it's also designed to grab the hose and be able to turn it. These work pretty good. If those don't get the job done, then you have the good old Knipex hose clamp pliers. Those work pretty good. And then if you can't get into the area, you have the cable type hose clamp pliers. So you've got like a wide and a narrow end that you can use, and then you squeeze the handle together. Oh, and then it squeezes those spring clamps. This is really good to get in a hard to reach area. You can get that on there, squeeze it together, and then you can reach in there and get it moved off there. These are a gear wrench brand. There's several tool manufacturers that make these, but so far I like the gear wrench ones the best. So a combination of those three, we'll get those spring clamps off there. Let's see if the Snap-on for the win. Yeah, I can get on there. I don't really have a good spot to mount my phone to anything, so I'm going to do this one-handed. Okay, it's swelled up on the end. It doesn't want to come up over it. I was hoping to get the clamp over it this direction. But it doesn't seem like it's gonna. You can only squeeze these clamps so far. Oh, I win. That way I can just slide the hose over and then on both ends and then put the clamps on. So now I gotta reach in there and get the other end. And I'm not gonna be able to do that on that end. I'm gonna need two hands. Sorry, guys. All right. So I'm gonna hot swap this little guy. Man, it almost doesn't seem long enough. No? I think it is. All right. We need to make sure both ends are loose. Nothing's worse than you get one end off and you know it's Mount St. Helens on one end, then you can't get the other one off. Then you end up, trying to get the other end back off. And all right, it moves. Got it. That was fun. Minimal leakage. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to bump you guys. Now I got to get those clamps where they need to be. Gotta love spring clamps. Not. My hands are all slick. The only thing I hate worse than getting coolant on me is death. DEF fluid in your armpit when it's freezing cold outside, that's a good time. Well, for Pete's sake. Everything's slick. Slimy. Come on. Go to your home. Okay. Sliding. Ow! That hurt my thumb. Okay. Just a little bit farther. Oh, we're there. Oh, yeah. Right there. Nailed it. Now I gotta do the same trick again. Sometimes it's good to have the snap-on one, so you gotta go straight. Sometimes the Knipex are nice with the angle. And sometimes the only way you can get it off is that cable type. Yep. Fixed. Alrighty. Top this thing off. Using John Deere Cool Guard, of course. Best coolant I've ever used. And I've used them all. I'm going to take her just a shade over the max cold line. So it'll probably bleed down a little bit. Let's try that. Trying to be careful. This tractor's clean as a whistle. Let's fire this beast up. See if we got any more leaks. We'll let the display power up. That was fast. Never happens that quick. I'm going to turn the heat on so the water valve will open up so we can circulate the coolant through the heater core. Alrighty. 262 hours. Alright. Touchscreen radio. This thing's got it going on. Alright. Nighty night, tractor. We'll see you later. Alrighty. No more leakies. There's that hose right there. Everything looks good, just needs rinsed off real good. So I'm gonna leave the shield off that right there so the customer can get in there and rinse that all off real good, and then this thing can go into storage. All right, it's 5 o'clock. I'm on the road. I got about an hour drive. I'm going straight home, and then in the morning we'll go back to that 7130 and we'll give it a try because it's on the way back to the shop. So we'll give it a try in the morning and see what happens. Good morning. It's 6 o'clock. We're on the road. We're going to head to that build site. Look at that 7130. Fingers crossed everything will be okay. You guys got your fingers crossed? I know I do. It's currently 66 degrees. Going to be a high 87 today. So it's going to be a little toasty, but at least it's not 105. So it could be. So it's not. So we're going to go start this 7130. Run it back and forth. See if we can get that code for the forward solenoid valve to come back, or any of the CAN bus codes. If those don't come back, then we'll move on to the next job. All right, here we are. Where did it go? Oh, it's clear back there. Way back there. Holy moly, this is a big build site. 9 acres they're clearing off. What a cute little disc. She's in the back 40. This thing's working like a champ. I think I'm gonna let him try it, see what happens. All right. Tractor worked perfect this morning. Couldn't ask for a better day. Got an 8R out there. Just going to town. All right, now we're going on the service call you guys have all been waiting for. I'm finally going back to the 9510R. Remember that one that had oil in the coolant? Oh yeah, look at that. Lovely. And we did some fan drives on it, and remember the turbo noise that it was doing? Sounds kind of funky. You can do it, little buddy. Yeah, that one. Also had a broken exhaust manifold stud. Finally going back there today. He was able to get done with the tractor. So we kind of put it on the back burner and was dealing with all the other catastrophes until that point. So now we're trying to get done all the stuff that we got lingering out there from the spring. So I got a turbo and exhaust manifold just in case some bolts break off, and an EGR cooler, and we're gonna rip this thing apart and get it fixed up and get it done for him. So the oil cooler, I had it sent off and it came back tested bad. So that is where the source of the oil was coming from getting into the coolant. So I don't know if I mentioned that to you guys or not. I know a lot of you guys were wondering how that was going to come back. So the oil cooler was bad. So I'm going to get in. We're actually going to be working in an air-conditioned shop today. All right.